You're listening to Airtime of the Geek.
Good afternoon, Ignition Radio listeners, and welcome to Airtime of the Geek. It's Monday, it's just gone 1 p.m. GMT. If you're listening via our website or via TuneIn. If you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can email me. It's paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk. You can also call the studio. It's 01642 329 620, or check out my website. It's airtimeofthegeek.xyz. Thanks to James and Alex very much for their off-the-cuff plugging. November is the month of crime, as I mentioned, so I'm continuing on with the crime theme. And this week's top 10, we are counting down my top 10 heist/robbery movies. And of course, starting at number 10, because it's more fun for me to do it that way, is Hard Rain. Heavy rainfall causes an Indiana river to swell and flood the town. All inhabitants are forced by public services to leave instantly. Tom and his uncle Charlie work for a money transport firm, and their assignment is to evacuate all the cash from the banks along the flooding river. So their truck is loaded with about $3 million. Hank tries to prevent further flooding, or he's the guy responsible for the dam up the river, but he has had to open one gate in order to save the old dam from breaking. Only the police under the sheriff's leadership stay in the town to prevent looting as the water level rises. Tom and Charlie's truck get stuck in the flooded road. This is the moment that Jim, an elderly thief, and his gang have been waiting for. In an attempt to get the money from the truck, Charlie gets shot and Tom swims off to save the cash bags. While trying to hide, he meets Karen, who resisted leaving the old church he's been restoring for 8 months. She thinks he is a looter and calls the cops to bring him in, but as the sheriff finds out about that much cash in a situation like this, he radios his old pal Hank up at the dam. Danger and crime ensues. Number 9 is Die Hard. The film that started the popular Die Hard franchise, directed by John McTiernan. New York City police officer John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, has flown out to Los Angeles to meet his estranged wife, Holly, in an attempt to reconcile their marriage over the Christmas holiday. He meets up with her at a Christmas Eve party at the Nakatomi Plaza skyscraper where she works. During the party, however, a group of terrorists led by Hans Gruber, played by the incomparable late great Alan Rickman, seize control of the building and turn the partygoers into hostages, except for John, who manages to escape the initial siege. Armed with little more than his wits and extensive police training, John does his best to alert the LA authorities to the attack, stay alive as he picks off the terrorists as best he can, and save his wife from becoming another one of Gruber's victims. Number 8 is Point Break. Point Break is a 1991 action film directed by Catherine Bigelow and starring Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze and Gary Busey. The title refers to the surfing term Point Break. The film was a box office success upon its release and has since gathered a cult following for it being utterly terrible. The film contains notable celebrity cameos including Red Hot Chili Peppers frontman Anthony Kiedis. There is a stage adaptation, Point Break Live, in which the role of Johnny Utah is cast directly from the audience moments before the show starts in order to maintain the authenticity of the role. In the action crime drama, Reeves stars as Johnny Utah, an FBI agent whose background consists of having served as a quarterback for Ohio State. Johnny and his partner Angelo Papas, played by Gary Busey, are assigned to investigate a string of bank robberies in the Los Angeles area committed by a gang nicknamed the Ex-Presidents due to their use of masks of former presidents during said robberies. Their investigation leads them to a group of surfers led by Bodie, played by Patrick Swayze, an adrenaline junkie who would do anything for a cheap thrill, including robbing banks. Johnny falls fast for Bodie's ex-girlfriend Tyler, played by the brilliant Laurie Petty, who he convinces to teach him how to surf. Johnny begins to suspect that of Bodie's involvement in the robberies performed by the ex-presidents, but at the same time he becomes addicted to his adrenaline-charged, thrill-seeking lifestyle. In the end, he is so immersed in the extreme sports that he has a difficult choice to make, friends or duty. A remake was released in 2015. It stars Luke Bracey as Johnny Utah and Edgar Ramirez as Bodie, and it was completely pointless. Number 7 is Reservoir Dogs. Reservoir Dogs is Quentin Tarantino's 1992 debut as a director and screenwriter. The film takes place largely in the aftermath of a jewellery heist gone wrong. After the robbery, which we never see on camera, is interrupted by the police, the surviving criminals, all of whom are using colour-based pseudonyms, and none of whom know who the others were before the job, escape to an abandoned warehouse and try to work out what went wrong, eventually deciding that there must be an undercover cop in their midst. Frequent flashbacks give the backstory of several of the characters and fill in the details of the crime, telling the story in a non-linear fashion, which would become Tarantino's signature style. In fact, the movie contains a lot of elements Tarantino would later use in films such as brutal violence, Seinfeldian conversation, though not at the same time. A video game was produced which followed the plot of the movie and allowed the players to take place in actually committing the heist, which was only alluded to in the film. It was accused massively of ripping off a Japanese film with the same plot line, but Tarantino put his own spin on it. Number 7 is True Romance. True Romance is a 1993 movie written by, again, Quentin Tarantino, based on a script by Roger Avery and directed by Tony Scott. It stars Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette, with a supporting cast that includes Dennis Hopper, Val Kilmer, Gary Oldman, Brad Pitt, and Christopher Walken. It tells the story of outlaw lovers Clarence and Alabama, who accidentally steal a suitcase full of cocaine and then go on the run from the mob. The couple make their way to Hollywood to sell the drugs, but there's a mob that catches up with them. The movie is notable beyond its star-launching casting for being the film that put Tarantino's writing on the Hollywood map. Additionally, it's fairly well known and well liked within the movie industry, given that all the stars in it, but isn't widely known outside of Tarantino fans. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can email me. It's paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk. You can also call the studio. It's 01642 329 620 or check out my website, airtimeofgeek.xyz. Continuing with our crime-themed month and the top 10, we come to number 5, Office Space. A comedy by Mike Judge of Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill fame, Office Space introduces us to the world of Initiatech, a soul-crushing inane software company presided over by Bill Lumbergh, a soul-crushingly inane boss obsessed with TPS reports, a soul-crushingly inane bit of paperwork who is slowly driving employee Peter Gibbons out of his mind. Then Peter gets distressed by a dose of hypnotherapy and stops caring about his job. Not that he wants to quit or feels that he should stop showing up, he just doesn't care. Soon after that, some outside consultants interview him trying to find people to lay off. Instead of puffing up his importance, Peter tells them exactly how the bloated bureaucracy of the company stops him from ever doing anything. The consultants, of course, take this as sheer brilliance, and Peter is fast-tracked for a promotion, but also discovers that 2 of his only friends, Michael and Samir, are going to be the ones who get the axe. While he shares the news, the 3 of them decide to do the only logical thing, rob the company. They come up with a simple plan but fail to notice a few very important details, and everything starts to spiral out of control. It is, of course, famous for one thing, the red stapler. Number 4, Ocean's 11. This is the story of a crew of expert thieves as they prepare and execute multiple very difficult heists across several movies. It's called Ocean's 11 because the leader's name is Danny Ocean, and there are 11 of them. Originally a remake of a 1960 film, also called Ocean's 11, starring Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack, it went on to displace the original and spawn 2 sequels, imaginatively titled Ocean's 12 and Ocean's 13. The film follows Danny, an ex-con fresh out of prison, approaching his buddy Rusty about performing a monumental heist. The goal? Rob the central vault of 3 Las Vegas casinos at the same time during a boxing match so that the grand total of the safe would be a little over $160 million. They gather the 11 and come to learn that the man they are robbing, Terry Benedict, is a man whose principal crime seems to be that he's dating Danny's ex-wife. The second film deals with the repercussions of their heist as Benedict tracks down the 11 and demands recompense in full plus interest. Seeing as none of the 11 were frugal with their money, this means that they have to find some other heist that will pay off an equal amount because they are too well known in the US. They travel to Europe and receive an offer from a legendary retired con man in which they steal a very famous MacGuffin. They are hounded on one side by a cocky acrobat thief who wants them the same loot, and a fair cop Interpol agent on the other. The third is best by itself. A member of the 11 is double-crossed by an unscrupulous landowner, Willie Bank, played by Al Pacino, with whom he was collaborating on the opening of a new casino. Danny convenes his gang to ruin the casino's opening night. This time Benedict joins forces with them as he has his own issues. Each film is not intended as anything other than sheer popcorn fun. Planning out the heists is entertaining, but mostly as an excuse to get an all-star cast together and have them bounce lines off each other. This was very much the only real purpose of the original film as well, having the Rat Pack together and looking cool. The crew consists of Danny Ocean, played by George Clooney, the gang's mastermind. Ocean knows everything about Las Vegas and nearly everyone in it. His plan in the first film is to rob the casino to take revenge on the guy who stole the chick from him. Rusty Ryan, played by Brad Pitt, Ocean's level-headed right-hand man, a jack of all trades. He plays a number of roles in the heists themselves. Ruben Tishkoff, played by Elliot Gould, a crooked venture capitalist and ex-casino owner who loves Vegas and its charms. He joins the gang as its financial backer to get revenge on Benedict for his part of business deals. It is he who invests in Bank's Casino in the third movie. Frank Catton, the late great Bernie Mac, a con artist who frequents and plays the inside man. In the first heist, he works as a croupier in one of the marked casinos. Bashatar, played by Don Cheadle, a Cockney engineer with the worst Cockney accent in history, barring, say, Dick Van Dyke. Basha is in charge of the demolitions and heavy machinery involved in the heists. He speaks in an impenetrable combination of Cockney slang and technical jargon. Livingston Dell, played by Eddie Jemison, tech expert who specialises in electronics and communications, neurotic and soft-spoken. He's more comfortable with machines than people. Virgil and Turk Malloy, played by Casey Affleck and Scott Kahn, a pair of bickering twins from Utah who do it all simple grunt work, but especially act as the wheelmen. Then Saul Bloom, played by Carl Reiner, a cranky old-school con artist. Bloom would rather be enjoying a comfortable retirement than having to pull off one more crazy heist. The amazing Yen, played by Shaobaoken, the Grease Man. Yen is a Chinese acrobat who is in charge of all the dangerous physical stunts. He speaks entirely in Mandarin, except when he curses, but appears to understand English well enough. In the first film, Rusty can understand him perfectly, and eventually so can the rest of the gang, but they never speak Mandarin back to him. Then there's Linus Caldwell, played by Matt Damon, a skilled pickpocket and Ocean's new protege. Linus comes from underworld royalty, as both of his parents are famous thieves. He desperately seeks to earn some respect of his own by pilling off big scores. Note that not a single one of these people own a vagina. Also appearing in main roles are Terry Benedict, played by Andy Garcia, the big bad from the first film, owner of the Bellagio, the MGM Grand and the Mirage, three of the biggest casinos in Vegas. He provides the impetus for the second film by tracking down the 11 and demanding repayment with interest, and later becomes an ad hoc member of 13, both as a financial backer and as the shill. Tesh Ocean, played by Julia Roberts, is the chick, ex-wife of Ocean, who by the first film has shacked up with Benedict. She is the main reason why Danny decides to rob Benedict's casinos. She becomes a member of the 12 after most of the main crew are jailed during a failed heist, an attempt to complete it involving Tess impersonating Julia Roberts in a very meta and terrible idea. There's Isabel Lahari, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, a fair cop who is introduced in the second film. She's been hunting down a master criminal, Gaspard Lemarque, for many years, unaware that he is her father. As Lemarque is the person Ocean's 12 are sealing the MacGuffin for, she ends up pursuing them as well, also Rusty's former love interest. Then there's Francois Touleau, played by the incredibly handsome and alluring Vincent Cassel, also known as the Night Fox, a truly accomplished thief who serves as a one-man goldfish poop gang in the second film. It also hired by Benedict in the third film to perform a double cross. And then there's Roman Nagel, played by Eddie Izzard, a genius inventor who briefly appears in the second film and becomes a member of the 13. Then Willie Bank, played by Al Pacino, the big bad of the third movie, a jerk-ass business mogul who partners with Ruben to build a new hotel casino, only to muscle him out of his share. Ruben suffers a heart attack as a result, prompting the rest of the crew to take revenge. Number 3 is Snatch. Snatch is the second film by British director and recovering Madonna enthusiast Guy Ritchie. It was released in 2000. Like his first film, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch is a humorous crime caper featuring a train wreck of villains in a cartoonish London underworld. I do prefer it to Lock, Stock, which is why it's on the list. The film's plot is essentially broken down to two mostly separate plot threads, both of which feature large ensemble casts. The film opens with Frankie Four Fingers, played by Benicio del Toro, stealing a huge 86-carat diamond in Antwerp, with the help of a section of the Russian mob that his boss is working with. Frankie is able to smuggle the diamond onto a plane, but his gun is taken by the Russians so as not to cause problems. Frankie is advised to go see Boris, a local fence in London, if he wants a new gun. The Russian gangster who took Frankie's gun, who is actually Boris's brother, and Boris immediately begins conspiring on how to steal the diamond from Frankie before Frankie heads back to America without the deed leading back to them. At this point, we're introduced to Turkish, played by Jason Statham, and Tommy, who are the closest thing the film has to main characters. The two are shady but basically decent entrepreneurs who dabble in unlicensed boxing and slot machines. Turkish, who has a reputation for running honest fights, has a bout coming up between his best fighter and one managed by notorious local gangster, Bricktop. There's just one problem for Turkish. His boxer gets knocked out and seriously injured mere days before the bout by Mickey, played by Brad Pitt, a bare-knuckle boxing Irish traveller. Without a fighter, Turkish recruits Mickey to fill the empty slot, but Bricktop forces Turkish to fix the fight as compensation for the change in boxers. Turkish is uncomfortable about being in Bricktop's debt and doubtful as to whether he can trust Mickey to go down as instructed. Both of these fears prove well-founded. Meanwhile, Boris has decided that the best way to go about getting the diamond without being involved is to prey on Frankie's gambling addiction. Boris gives Frankie a tip on how the upcoming fight with Bricktop's fighter is supposed to be fixed, which sends Frankie off to the bookies to place a bet on it. Boris then hires a pair of pawnbrokers, Sol and Vincent, to ambush him at Bricktop's bookies. When Frankie disappears, his boss and New York crime kingpin, Cousin Avi, heads to London and recruits enforcer for hire Bullet-Tooth Tony, played by Vinnie Jones, to find Frankie and the diamond. The two threads parallel each other and eventually converge in surprising ways before the dust finally settles. Number 2 is Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is the third film by director Quentin Tarantino, and as you may tell from previous entries on the list, it's something of a thing for him. Quentin Tarantino serves this as his subtle homage to blaxploitation. The eponymous Jackie Brown, played by Pam Grier, is a burnt-out, middle-aged flight attendant routinely smuggling money across the border from Mexico. During the course of the film, Jackie becomes entangled in the lives of gunrunner Ordell Roby, played by Samuel L. Jackson, his ex-convent friend Louis, played by Robert De Niro, Lewis's piece of hot tail, Melanie, played by Bridget Fonda, in one of the last roles she did on the big screen, bail bondsman Mac Cherry, played by Robert Foster, and an ATF officer played by Michael Keaton, and LAPD Michael Bowen, who is probably the least famous person in the movie. When the authorities discover Jackie's smuggling, they put together a sting operation which will have Jackie implicate Ordell in the money smuggling so that the ATF can take him down, and the ATF promises to clear Jackie of outstanding charges against her, but she can only go free if the plan goes off without a hitch. When Jackie finds out that Ordell plans on smuggling in more money than normal, she keeps the information from the ATF and works out a plan of her own to keep all the money for herself while gaining her freedom with Max's help. Jackie could pull it off, but she must outsmart the cops, Lewis and Ordell. As a film, it's somewhat different from the usual Tarantino fare, being probably the closest thing to he will ever get to real life. Ordell is much closer to life relatively in his portrayal of a charismatic yet paranoid thug, and Jackie's plan and romance with Mac Cherry are full of subtleties and meaningful conversations about getting old and becoming again in a harsh life. Its climax is much less bombastic than most, but doesn't take that as a meaning that it's less bloody. It's based on the novel Rum Punch by L. Maud Leonard, and that served for the basis of the film's story, which probably explains why it's the least Tarantino-esque of Tarantino's films. Interestingly, however, the race of the main character, Jackie, was switched from a white blonde woman to Pam Grier, but let's face it, who's more fabulous than Pam Grier? Oh, and Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight, also based on an Elmore Leonard novel, seems to share a universe with the film, as Soderbergh brought in Michael Keaton to reprise his role as Ray Nicolette and used George Clooney's mugshot as Seth Greco from Dusk Till Dawn, another Tarantino nod. And if there was any doubt as to what the number one would be, number one is, of course, The Usual Suspects. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. The dark and multi-layered neo-noir film helped launch the careers of Kevin Spacey, who earned an Oscar for his performance, Benicio del Toro, director Bryan Singer, and writer Christopher McQuarrie, as well as relaunching that of Gabriel Byrne. The movie is told mostly in flashback form. Roger Verbalkind, played by Kevin Spacey, is the only survivor of a bombing and a shootout that left 27 people dead. While his lawyer fights for his speedy release from police custody, Kint begrudgingly reveals the events that led up to the previous night's explosion to custom agents Dave Coujon. Meanwhile, in a hospital not far away, it is revealed that a Hungarian dealer survived the blast, although unfortunately he only speaks Hungarian and isn't in much shape to be divulging his story. Coujon is determined to get the truth, no matter what it takes, particularly the truth about Dean Keaton, played by Gabriel Byrne, one of Kint's fellow suspects and the target of his long-time vendetta. Eventually, the crux of Kint's story begins to centre around the presence of a criminal mastermind named Kaiser Sose. Coujon at first doubts the existence of the bogeyman of the criminal underworld, but as Kint's story continues, Coujon eventually realises just how deep this particular rabbit hole goes. Anything further said on this movie would be a complete spoiler, so if you haven't seen The Usual Suspects, shame on you, go watch The Usual Suspects. That was my top 10 heists and robbery movies. If you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can email me, paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk. You can also call the studio on 01642 329 620 or check out my website. It's airtimeofthegeek.xyz. That's everything for me from this week. Later on in the week coming up, we of course have Off the Cuff and Kinnell. Looking forward to those shows immensely. I will speak to you all next week.
For your listening pleasure, Airtime of the Geek.